Howdy there, welcome back to the channel. My name's Evan, or EJ, you can call me either one, and today I'm going to be doing my it's gonna have both. I'm gonna do spoiler free first, and then the spoiler section at the back half of the video, but I'm doing my review for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Now, I know I'm really late to this, because this movie came out about a month ago at this point, I think, and I myself saw it like 2-3 weeks ago, but I have been absent from YouTube for the past month, and I still want to make this video and just get my thoughts out there on it, what I thought about it. So yeah, let's get into the review. So first I'm going to do the spoiler-free section for people that still haven't seen the movie or don't want it spoiled yet. Just, give my overall thoughts on it. Excuse me. So for the spoiler-free stuff, I want to say this has become my favorite Guardians of the Galaxy movie, and probably my favorite MCU movie in the last 2-3 years. I know, a lot of people have been falling off the whole MCU, bandwagon or whatever, and I get it. I myself was kind of teetering off a bit, but this movie has single-handedly, restored my faith in whatever they've got coming out. I know that it's probably just more like a James Gunn is really good at this thing, but I still have faith that Marvel can still improve and kind of save themselves, keep themselves afloat. But yeah, this movie is great. It's first of all, I think in terms of the Guardians cast, almost every member of it gives their best performance in this movie. Specifically, Chris Pratt really surprised me. I didn't think I was going to like him this much going into it. I knew I liked Star-Lord, and he was a fun character, but this is probably my favorite appearance of Star-Lord in this entire franchise. He was really good in this movie. And obviously Rocket was great. I knew he was probably going to impress me going into it, because he was very heavy in the marketing. It was very much about how excuse me, it was obviously going to be Rocket's story, so I kind of figured we were going to get a lot of great scenes with Rocket, and he was great in this movie too. Bradley Cooper did an incredible job. Zoe Saldana was very good. Karen Gillan was great. Pom Klementieff also surprised me a lot as Mantis in this. This is probably my favorite performance by her in this franchise too. She was great in this movie. But yeah, for what else for the spoiler-free section should I say? Oh yeah, and so this movie is also serves as the finale for this version of the Guardians team in the MCU. And if you're wondering how it functions as that, this is probably one of the most satisfying ends to a comic book trilogy I've ever seen. I think they tied up everything really nicely. It was done very well, and I feel like if you're a really big fan of the Guardians movies or the team in general, this will be a very satisfying ending for you. So, highly suggest going to see this movie. So yeah, that's about it for the spoiler-free section. Alright, we're now going into the spoiler segment of my video, so if you haven't seen the movie yet and you don't want it spoiled for you, get out of here. I'll give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, should be gone now. So, first thing I want to talk about, actually, what do I want to talk about first? I'm going to talk about Adam Warlock first, because he's kind of something that stuck out to me. In my opinion, Adam Warlock... Okay, I first want to say, everyone seems to think that Adam Warlock is kind of the weakest part of the movie. That seems to be the general consensus. And I do kind of agree, but I do still like the way they handled him, because I've seen now in interviews that James Gunn has said he didn't really initially want to include Adam Warlock. I think Adam Warlock was supposed to be in Infinity War, but somehow that ended up not happening. So James Gunn was kind of forced to deal with him in this movie. So with all that being considered, I do think he was handled pretty well. I do actually like the way they handled him, where he was in that cocoon and he was meant to be, this this whatever. But and the High Evolutionary took him out before he was done, and he's kind of like a giant baby in a man's body. I do kind of like that as a concept, and I can't speak today. What is happening? Sorry. I think it kind of leaves a lot of room for growth the more he appears in the MCU. But I do. He is very different from the way he is in the comics in this movie. I will say that. So if you're going into it expecting a super comic accurate Adam Warlock, don't. You'll only be disappointed. But all things considered, I think they handled him well enough. He's not the strongest part of the movie, but considering that originally James Gunn didn't even want to use him, I think he handled him decently well. Will Poulter was actually very enjoyable in the role, and he had a lot of funny moments in the movie. But yeah, I think overall he is probably the weakest part of the movie in general, but still not terrible or even bad. Just okay, really. Now, I also kind of want to talk about the opening few minutes of this movie because I feel like it sets the tone for what the movie is really, really well. It's literal. So the first scene in the movie, it's just like a bunch of baby raccoons in a cage, all just kind of like running around together. And then you hear footsteps and you see the High Evolutionary approaching, and a bunch of the raccoons run back to try and get away from him, but just one raccoon just kind of sits there, and High Evolutionary grabs him. And we get a close-up shot of his face. This was in the trailers too, this shot. We get a close-up shot of its face, where it's just its eyes and like the bridge of its nose, and then you can see it kind of like changes a little bit, and then we zoom out, and we're in the present day, and it's Rocket. And I like that shot, but what I wanted to talk about was just the next few minutes where it's literally just Rocket walking around nowhere while all the Guardians are doing their own thing, and he's just listening to Creep by Radiohead, which, had I said that before I'd seen the movie, I would have been like, that sounds a bit odd, but like, with the context of the rest of the movie, having seen it, I think it's like one of the best things they could have done for the opening scene. Just him walking around singing along to the lyrics was, I think it was a great way to set the tone for the movie. And then when the song's done, he walks into this little building, and you just see Quill just slouched over a table, and apparently he's a drunk now because he's dealing with the fact that his girlfriend died, but then they got her back, but she doesn't remember him now, so she's not with them. He's just kind of become this depressed, miserable dude, and he's just kind of always drinking. So I think that was really an interesting direction to take Star-Lord in. I actually really enjoyed that, and I think Chris Pratt played it pretty well. So yeah, that opening few minutes is probably one of my favorite opening few minutes of any Marvel movie now. Like, I've really enjoyed it a lot. In that opening 5 minutes, we get this brief little moment of Kraglin still trying to learn how to use Yondu's arrow, which I think is a lot of fun, and honestly, I'm surprised he hasn't learned how to use it by now. It's been, how long has it been since Guardians 2? 2017, 2019, 2021. It's been 6 years since he got that arrow. It's been longer in universe because of the time jump in game. Did Kraglin get dusted? I can't remember if he got dusted. I don't think we ever found out about that, but yeah. But we do get this brief scene of him trying to learn how to use the arrow, and Cosmo is there with him, and I'm trying to remember exactly what happens. It's been a few weeks since I've seen the movie at this point. He tries to use it, and I remember it like haywires, and it goes directly into Nebula's chest, and she just pulls out and is like, dude, or something like that. And then Cosmo says something, and then Kraglin calls him a bad dog, and that becomes like this running joke for the whole movie, where Cosmo cannot believe that someone would call him a bad dog, and I thought that was really fun. That was like one of my favorite running jokes throughout the movie. I really enjoyed that. Yeah, that's about... Is there anything else I want to talk about? Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, if you haven't seen the Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special, like me, I still haven't gotten the chance to see it because I don't have Disney Plus right now, but I do know pretty much what happens in it. But if you haven't seen that, you wouldn't know that the Guardians just kind of own nowhere now. It's just theirs. They kind of just live there. That's pretty cool. I actually really like that. It's just like their headquarters now is this head of a dead Celestial. That's really cool. And also, Star-Lord and Mantis are like half siblings, which that makes sense. I like that actually, but I Still wish I had been able to see the Guardian special and have that be a surprise, the Christmas special, than just have someone tell me that over the internet. But whatever. But shortly after those opening few minutes, Adam Warlock comes to nowhere and he just attacks all the Guardians out of nowhere. And he badly injures Rocket. Like, he hits him, and Rocket's like bleeding out. They need to get this thing on him. Just like I can't remember what they call it in the movie. It's this thing that would like essentially keep him stabilized while he's injured. And but it doesn't work on him because of this cybernetic thing that was put inside him when he was younger by the High Evolutionary. So the whole movie, that's what they're trying to do, is they're trying to find out how they can get this thing out of him without killing him, so they can then let him heal and he doesn't just die. And they have like 48 hours to do that, I think is what it said. I probably should have tried to find a way to rewatch this before I did this review, but here we are. But yeah, for most of the movie, Rocket's actually out of commission. Like, he's just out. He's not awake, which I was not expecting. Like, looking at the trailers, like, I figured he was probably going to die at the end of this movie. I figured a few of them were going to die. But I didn't, like, looking at the trailers, I figured Rocket would still be with them for most of the movie. I didn't think he would be just, like, out. But honestly, I really like that choice, because throughout the movie, we get these flashbacks of Rocket's life with the High Evolutionary. And he has these 3 animal friends that could also talk like him, that he was friends with in this cage while they were all being experimented on. He had Lila, Floor, and Teefs. They all pick their own names just lying there, Rocket included, which, excuse me. As soon as those characters got introduced in the movie, I was like, oh, this is gonna be sad. And yeah, I was very, very right. I almost cried like 4 times during this movie, because those poor animals, like, Jesus Christ. One thing they make very easy in this movie is hating the villain, because he just experiments on these poor, defenseless little animals. And he ends up killing 3 of them. But he's probably killed more than that, but I'm talking about he kills Lila, Floor, and Teefs. And after we've spent like a decent chunk of the movie getting to know them, learning to like them. So that was one of the saddest moments in the movie. But yeah, I will say that in those flashback scenes with Lila, Floor, and Teefs, I feel like they were laying it on a little thick, with the fact that they all just kept going, it's good to have friends. It's like, dude, you're making it painfully obvious that these 3 are going to die. Because, like, Rocket's never mentioned them before in the other 2 movies. We've never seen them before. So, they made it pretty obvious that those 3 were still going to die. But that didn't make it any less sad. Also, just want to say, in this movie, Nebula has a new metal arm than she does in the previous movies. And I'm normally, I'm kind of tired of the whole nanotech thing in comic book movies. I feel like it's kind of played out at this point, and it's kind of getting boring. But that arm is so cool looking. I actually really like that a lot. Very rarely do I feel like the nanotech thing is used well in comic book movies. I like the way they used it in Infinity War only, pretty much. Like, I liked that Iron Man suit. I liked the way it was used in the Suicide Squad with Bloodshot's guns. And I'm okay with it on Star-Lord's helmet, but that's about it, really. And now this arm. Other than that, I feel like it's pretty lazy, to be honest, but that arm is really cool, actually. I just realized I've been mentioning him a bunch throughout this video, but I actually want to talk about the High Evolutionary in detail for a minute. He's my favorite villain out of the 3 Guardians movies, like, by a lot. Like, the first movie you had Ronan, he was alright. Like, he served his purpose as the villain of that movie. He was decent. Well, I'm burping a lot today. And then, in the second one, you had Ego, which was a massive step up from Ronan, because, hey, Kurt Russell's just a great actor. Not saying Lee Pace isn't, but I feel like Kurt Russell kind of had a lot more room to do things in that role than Lee Pace did. But, yeah, but Ego was a massive step up to me, just because he has a personal connection to not 1, but 2 of the Guardians of the Galaxy members. And the whole movie you think he's an ally. Well, you're supposed to think he's an ally. I think it was pretty obvious that he was going to be the villain once you get halfway through the movie and you realize you have yet to meet an antagonist. But most of the movie you think he's an ally, and then towards the end of the movie, like right at the start of the third act, he reveals himself as the villain. And not only that, he reveals that he's the one that killed Quill's mother, so it makes him really easy to hate. But yeah, Ego was a big step up, and now I think High Evolutionary is a big step up from Ego, because I like sympathetic villains a lot. Like, I really like whenever you can get where the villain's coming from, and you kind of understand that they're not, like, they have a good cause, but they're not going about it right. But I have kind of missed just having villains that were just deplorable, just terrible people. And this movie gave me that exactly. The High Evolutionary is not at all a redeemable person. He's just a terrible guy through and through. And I kind of liked that, because I didn't need to... I don't know, sometimes you want a villain that's just evil for the sake of being evil every now and then. And I got that with this movie. But not only that, Chukwudi Iwuji's performance as the High Evolutionary, I actually really liked a lot. I thought he was very good in the role. I also want to say, like, his death scene, it's not really a death scene. They just kind of leave him to die in the shipwreckage. But that scene at the end where all the Guardians team up against him and beat him up, and then Gamora, like, peels the skin off his face to reveal what Rocket did to him. That was, like, surprisingly gory for an MCU movie. Like, hey, I'm here editing this video, and I feel like I should let you guys know that I'm about to show an image that's somewhat gory, so if you don't deal with gore very well, you might want to just fast forward a few seconds. I'll put a timestamp up on screen to where the image isn't there, but yeah, I just thought I'd let you guys know. Back to the video. I know, like, in Doctor Strange 2, obviously there was that moment when Black Bolt's head exploded, but most of that was still covered by his helmet or his mask, so you couldn't really see a lot. You could just kind of see the blood that poured out of his nose. But in this, you see, like, the High Evolutionary's skull, his eyes, like, exposed, like, there's a lot of blood on his face. Like, it's surprisingly gory for the MCU, and can I just say, I really hope we start to get more stuff like that going forward in the MCU, like stuff that's more kind of gory and stuff like that, because at a certain point you're going to have to introduce a lot of characters that are, like, I'm trying to find a way to word this correctly. They're at their best when they're in a very adult environment where they can be gory and kind of vulgar. Like, for instance, Wolverine or Blade. You're introducing Deadpool soon, but I know that's going to be rated R anyway. So, like, I doubt anyone at Marvel's going to see this video. But on the off chance that they do, just give more R-rated stuff a chance. Like, it could really... You could really benefit from it. But, yeah, I actually really liked that scene where they just, like, peel off his face and we see what actually Rocket did to him all those years ago after he killed Lila Florentiefs. Is there anything else I wanted to mention about him? Oh yeah, High Evolutionary has one of the coldest lines from any villain I've ever heard. If I can find a clip, I'll play it right now. But if
this animal, you must stop, for God's sake!
There is no God! That's why I stepped in!
That was such a good line. I loved that, and his delivery on it I really liked a lot. But, yeah, Chukwudi Iwuji was really good as the High Evolutionary in this movie. Something else I really liked about this movie was the relationship between Quill and Gamora. Because in a lesser movie, they would have gone the safe route and have them end up together again regardless of what happened to them before. Like, Gamora died, came back, but she hasn't met... Like, this version of Gamora hadn't met Quill yet. She doesn't know him. But... like I said, in a lesser movie, by the end of this movie, they would have been together again for some unknown reason. But in this movie, they don't get back together. And, like, Quill is trying his hardest to make her love him again, but, like, she just doesn't know him like that. She just doesn't know most of this team like that, aside from Nebula. And even then, this version of Gamora hadn't reconciled with her version of Gamora yet. So there's even like some tension there still, which I really liked, because I don't know, it felt like there was still like some consequences left from what happened in Endgame and Infinity War. It felt like not everything turned out to be perfectly okay. Not like this is some massive thing that, you know, means something for this universe. But I just like that not everything is exactly the way it was before all that happened. I really enjoyed that. Yeah, that was something I really liked about this movie, actually. Also, just want to say that the soundtrack for this movie bangs. It is so good. If you haven't heard it, go listen to it on Spotify. It's such a good soundtrack, which isn't surprising. The soundtrack for all three of these movies are great, but still, if you haven't heard it, go give it a listen. Oh yeah, and something else I forgot to mention is Gamora is with the Ravagers now. She's a Ravager like Quill used to be, and like she's hanging out with Sylvester Stallone's character. I can't remember. It was like Stakar, I think his name was Stakar O'Gord. I'm pretty sure. But yeah, I honestly wasn't expecting Sylvester Stallone to make an appearance in this movie. I often forget that he's even in the MCU because he had one brief appearance in Guardians 2, and now this. But it was cool seeing him pop up. I really liked that, actually. And I do think it's cool that Gamora's with the Ravagers now. That's a neat way to go with that. Also, towards the end of this movie, Rocket is after he's been, you know, recovered, after everyone's been kind of saved, not saved, but, you know, he's awake now. He's up and running again. He's not out cold. He's helping evacuate people off the ship onto nowhere, and he sees this room full of cages, and he goes in there and he rescues another cage of baby raccoons so they wouldn't end up like him or just end up dying. And he finds out that he is in fact a raccoon from Earth. He's literally from Earth. So after all these years of saying, I'm not a raccoon, he was in fact a raccoon. And I really like that moment. It's like a very like full circle moment for him, because this whole time in the MCU, he's just been calling himself Rocket. Everyone's just been calling him Rocket. But then, I can't remember exactly, during the scene, the High Evolutionary attacks him, and I can't remember exactly how we get there, but Rocket is like attacking back, and then he says, I'm Rocket Raccoon, or something like that. And that's one of my favorite moments in the movie, just because, like, him finally accepting, like, just that part of himself, and just embracing that he is in fact a raccoon, was such a great moment for me. I'm not really sure why. I just really liked that a lot. Something else that surprised me about this movie is no one died. I thought at least one member of the team was going to die. And if you watch my... I'm so red. It's really hot in here, sorry. And I'm standing up. I'm moving around this video. I'm trying something different. But I thought at least one person was going to die. And if you go back to my original breakdown video of the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 trailer, first one, I made it very clear that I thought Rocket was going to die. Gotta say it now because it seems very... I'll get it out here one of these days. It seems very heavily hinted at in the trailer. Rocket is so dead. He's gonna die, and
I'm done running.
I'm gonna be sad about it. He's like my favorite member of the Guardians too. He's one of my favorite characters in the MCU. I really love him as a character. I think Bradley Cooper does a great job voicing him, and Sean Gunn is really great in the mocap. So if he does die, I'm gonna be very sad about it, and it looks like that's the outcome they're heading towards. So yeah, I'm not super thrilled about that, but as long as it's like a good send-off for the character, I won't be too mad. I'll just probably be really sad for a few days. Over time, I thought maybe a little less because they were kind of landed on very thick in the marketing. But I figured if it wasn't him, it was going to be Drax. And I thought maybe even Quill could die. I don't know. But no one died. None of them died. We did get faked out a couple of times. We thought Rocket was going to die because he did flatline for a few minutes. By the way, that scene, so sad. And Chris Pratt was like really acting in that scene. He was very good in that scene. But also, towards the end of the movie, we think Star-Lord's gonna die because he drops his Zune and he goes off to save it, and because of that, he gets separated from everyone else and he jumps out into space and like he starts freezing, his face starts bloating. I'm like, oh, he's dead. That's a dead man. And I gotta say, really happy he didn't die, because if they killed off Star-Lord in that way, that would have been so bogus. He just was trying to save his Zune. He risked his life for that, and he died because of it. That would have been... I wouldn't have liked that. So I'm glad that they didn't really follow through with that. But they faked us out because they knew we were expecting someone to die, and that's why all the fake outs were so effective, for me anyway. It's because I was expecting someone to die. So, yeah. And like... it's not just because this is the finale I was expecting people to die. I was expecting people to die because a lot of the actors have said that this is like their final thing in the MCU. Like Dave Bautista said he's not coming back as Drax. I think Zoe Saldana's pretty much done. I think probably everyone else is open to coming back at some point. But I don't know for sure. But yeah, that's something that surprised me, is that everyone was still breathing by the end of this. And now, towards the end of the movie, after all the conflict's been resolved, the High Evolutionary's been defeated, Rocket's back with them, the team disbands. The Guardians of the Galaxy disband. Quill goes back to Earth. He's kind of done being the leader of this team. And he goes back to Earth and he lives with his grandpa. And lets him know that he is in fact still alive. Mantis leaves because she had a very good moment in this scene where she's like, I spent all my life kind of doing what other people want. Like, I was doing what Ego wants. Now I'm just kind of doing what the Guardians do. I've never actually done anything that I want to do. So she goes to, like, live life a little bit. And I actually really like that kind of moment for her character. And I'm excited to see where that ends up. If we see her again, we probably will, but it'll probably be a while. But yeah, I really like that. So now, Nebula and Drax are staying on Nowhere. They're kind of running the place. Drax is taking care of the kids because there's this really nice moment towards the end of the movie where after they've picked up these kids, and Drax is like the only one that's good with him. He can understand what they're saying. They have fun with him. Nebula says, you were never meant to be a destroyer. You were meant to be a dad. And that's a really sweet moment. I like that a lot. That was really nice. So yeah, Nebula and Drax are kind of staying behind on Nowhere with, with everyone else, just kind of holding down the fort. And now Rocket is the new leader of the Guardians of the Galaxy. And the new team that we see in the post-credit scene is Rocket, Kraglin, Cosmo, Groot, who by the way is like King Groot now, and he looks really cool. He's massive. This little girl that they say from the High Evolutionary ship, I can't remember what her name is. I'll put it on screen if I remember to. I can't remember what her name is, and I feel bad about it. But wasn't there? Oh, and Adam Warlock. So that's the new Guardians of the Galaxy team, which I actually really like. I'm excited to see if we see them pop up again at some point. We probably will in like some Avengers movie or something. But I actually really like that team of characters. I think it's going to be very fun to see where they go with them, the direction they take that team in. And I really like that Rocket specifically is the leader of the team. It's like he has grown so much as a character since the start of this franchise, and he's had probably what is now maybe my favorite character arc in the MCU. I don't know for sure. It's very hard to beat out Iron Man's arc for me, going from this kind of like selfish prick who only really cares about making money and himself to this selfless hero who's willing to sacrifice himself to save the universe. That's one of my favorite arcs. That is my favorite arc in the MCU. But now Rocket is either right up there with him or has surpassed him. I don't know for sure. I'll give it time to sit because sit is what I meant to say. I'll give it time to sit because I know I saw this movie weeks ago, but it still technically could be recency bias. So only time will tell on that. But yeah, I'm very excited to see where this new team of Guardians go in the future because they look like a lot of fun. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, in the scene where the Guardians disband, like after everyone has decided they're going to go their separate ways, they all do like the Ravager salute to Rocket and like acknowledge that he's going to be their leader now. And after everyone does it and stands up, we just hear Groot go, "I love you guys." And I didn't think about this in the movie. I was just like, oh, he can just talk now, and he decides not to? Okay, cool. But then after the movie, I saw this thing on Twitter or something somewhere where it's like, no, Groot cannot speak English. What that is after sitting with these movies for so long, after being with Groot for this entire franchise, we can finally understand the language he speaks. We can understand him now. That's not just him speaking English. He's still saying, I am Groot. We can just understand what he's saying now. And I like that so much. That's so fun. Like, that's like one of my favorite things about this movie. Like, it's just they didn't have to do that, but it doesn't really if it wasn't in there, it wouldn't have really affected the movie at all. But it's just such a fun little thing to leave us off on that I really like that a lot. And to be honest, I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to talk about for this movie. I loved it. I love it a lot. It's my favorite MCU movie in the last few years. I think I like it more than No Way Home. I'm pretty sure. If not, they're like right equal for me. I know a lot of people don't really like No Way Home as much anymore because they just see it as like fan service or whatever, but I don't care. I still love that movie. But this one, I think I probably like more. But yeah, great movie. If you haven't seen it, I don't know why you stuck around for the spoiler section, but if you want to watch it, I highly suggest going to see it in theaters while it's still there. It's just a great movie. Like, you'll have a good time. You'll also probably cry a few times because it's very sad, but it's very much worth seeing in the theaters. If I had to give it a rating within the context of the MCU, I'd probably give it about a 9 out of 10. Or a 9.5 maybe. Like, I thought it was great. I loved it. I can't wait to be able to watch it again. Very excited to see the future for the Guardians in the MCU, the new team of Guardians. Yeah, very excited to see where this all ends up. Very good movie. And that's about all I've got. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on my post notifications if you don't want to miss any of my future uploads. Usually upload every Sunday, whenever I'm not absent for a month. But that's about all I've got for you today. See ya.